Welcome to episode 7 of A Journey Through the History of Papua New Guinea. Today's story takes us back to the late 1800s, to the time of the Pacific labor trade, when thousands of Melanesian men and some women were taken away on boats to work on sugar and copra plantations in places like Fiji, Samoa, and Queensland. The taking of these Melanesians far from their homes to work as laborers is often called blackbirding, an expression that came from Africa, meaning to steal black labor. This map shows where many of the Melanesians were taken from and where they ended up. Most of those who were taken from their homes were from the New Hebrides and the Solomon Islands. But perhaps you might not know that about 10,000 of them were from islands that later became part of Papua New Guinea. They included New Britain, New Ireland, Bougainville, Buka, and many of the small islands to the east of Milne Bay. Many of the Melanesians were happy to go on what they saw as an adventure to a foreign land and were happy for the payment they were given. But some did not want to go and were taken away by force or trickery. This episode is about one of these people, a young man named Wakari, who was from the island of Bu, not far from Milne Bay. The story is about how he was taken away to work on a plantation in Queensland and how he managed to escape. It is a tale of deception and bravery, with a happy ending. I hope you enjoy it.
Our story begins in late 1883, when 24-year-old Wakari left Bow Island and paddled across to nearby Basalaki Island to visit friends. While they were talking on the beach, a foreign ship appeared offshore. White men came ashore in rowing boats, bringing with them some men from nearby Testi Island who spoke a little English. These men acted as translators. They told Wakari and his friends that the strangers were looking for workers to cut sugar cane in a place they had never heard of. They said they would be away from home for 3 moons, about 3 months, and promised a tomahawk, a knife, pipes, tobacco, and a piece of cloth for anyone who agreed to go. At the end of their period of work, they said, each man would receive a box of goods to take home. Wakari and his friends hesitated. They didn't want to leave, but the goods tempted them, and the guns carried by the strangers frightened them. In the end, they agreed to go aboard the ship, called the Lizzie. It didn't take long for the truth to emerge. Once they were at sea, the Teste Island men told them they had been tricked. They would be gone for 3 years, not 3 moons. There were already many other young men from Milne Bay aboard, all taken the same way. The voyage was miserable. They were fed rice that made them sick, and anyone who disobeyed was beaten. They were heading for Townsville, a coastal town in Queensland. The voyage was miserable. Before they arrived, the Teste Island men gave them a warning. When a man comes aboard and asks questions, don't complain, they said. If you tell him you were tricked, you'll never go home again. So when the government inspector boarded the Lizzie, Wakari and the others said nothing. They were landed in Townsville on the 2nd of June 1883, then sent north to a sugar plantation close to the settlement of Innisfail. Life on the plantation was harsh. They worked 6 days a week from sunrise to sunset, cutting cane and hauling firewood. They lived in small huts like these. Breakfast was bread, dinner was rice, and through the day they chewed sugar cane to keep going. They slept on bare floors, wrapped in thin blankets. If they slowed down, they were beaten with a rope or locked up overnight before being sent straight back to work. Conditions were so bad that within 3 months, 5 men from Wakari's group had died. Eventually, Wakari and his friends couldn't bear it any longer, and they decided to make an escape. One night, they slipped away, stealing pumpkins from the store and filling bottles with water. They took a small boat they found tied up on the Johnstone River. The current carried them to the sea, and they hoisted the sail, steering north along the Queensland coast. The path they followed is shown on this modern map of the area. They were frightened, but they were free. After 5 days at sea, they reached Tiny Murray Island, or Mur, in Torres Strait, exhausted and hungry. They lost their boat when it drifted away on the tide. They might have died there, but missionaries found them and took them to Thursday Island, where they recovered. Here, on Thursday Island, Wakari heard that a mission boat was leaving for Port Moresby. He saw this as a chance to get closer to his home near Milne Bay, so he hid on board as a stowaway. The boat, with Wakari on board, arrived in Port Moresby on 9th August 1884. Wakari soon found that he wasn't alone. Several other New Guineans had escaped from Queensland plantations and were also in Port Moresby. William Laws and James Chalmers of the London Missionary Society were also in Port Moresby. They welcomed Wakari and they listened to his story. He told them what happened in Queensland and how he and others had escaped. Wakari had been in Port Moresby about 3 months when Commodore James Erskine arrived and conducted an important historical event. Erskine arrived aboard the HMS Nelson at the beginning of November 1884. On the 2nd of November, he raised the British flag and declared that Southeast New Guinea was now under British control as a protectorate. After the ceremony was over, the missionaries told Erskine about the escaped labourers. Erskine decided to hold an inquiry. The labourers were asked to explain their experiences in Queensland and how they had escaped. Erskine was shocked by what he heard. The stories of deception, exploitation and mistreatment gave a damning picture of the labour trade. Commodore Erskine decided he would help Wakari and the others who had escaped from plantations in Queensland. 2 weeks after he arrived, he sailed east to raise the British flag at other places along the coast, and he took Wakari and the others who had escaped from Queensland with him. Along the way, he dropped each man at his home. At last, all of them, including Wakari, were finally back home, where they had many stories to tell their friends and families.
So that is the story of the young man Wakari and how he managed to escape from the sugar plantation near Innisfail in Queensland. For young Wakari, the journey was finally over. 10 months after being taken away, after months of hard labour, cruelty and danger, he was back with his family and friends on Bow Island. He had survived where many others had not. It was an extraordinary escape, and a reminder of the courage and endurance of New Guinea's island people during one of the darkest chapters in Pacific history. Thank you for watching and listening, and I hope you join me for our next episode. It is an amazing story that took place in the 1870s about how hundreds of Europeans were tricked into coming to New Ireland to settle. They believed they would find a paradise where they could live the rest of their lives. But they were shocked and horrified by what they found. Find out about what this was all about in episode 8. Goodbye for now, and I hope to see you again soon.